All right, welcome back to Resilient Voices and Beyond. I'm so excited for this episode. I've literally been patiently waiting to interview these wonderful people. Before we get into introducing them, I just want to say I appreciate you guys following me on this journey with this podcast and all the support. And I hope that within doing this, I've been able to provide a little bit more of an insight educationally and just overall for the people who are working in this field and around in or around this field. So thank you. Without further ado, because I'm ready to get right into it, I'm going to have my guests introduce themselves.
Well, my name is Scott, and I'm here with my wife, Christina. We have been fostering and adopting and kind of being in and around this whole thing for about the last, 11 years. Mm-hmm. Is that about right, hon?
Yep.
And, so we have had about 11 cases, maybe.
11 to 13 if you count kids coming back that were already in your home, that go home and come back.
Yeah. But... And we've, had the, the gamut of experiences with, I guess, quote unquote, easy cases and then quote unquote hard or more challenging cases. So, we've seen a lot of different things, but definitely have not seen it all. But, I think we've had a good, I guess, rounded experience in the foster care system. Would you agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Awesome. So, I'm so excited, and I'm trying to hold my excitement in. But, I ask this question to everyone that comes on this show, and I have to formulate it differently depending on who I'm talking to. But in the case of you guys, how did this journey start? Like, when did you guys decide, I'm gonna be a foster parent, I'm gonna be an adoptive parent? Like, what started that for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I'll step in here because I think it's really common that the wife comes home to the husband and says, like, I have this desire to help kids, and I feel like God is telling us to help the kids. And I think more than just Scott, husbands tend to look at the legalities where women tend to just be more emotional.
I wouldn't say the legalities. I was very much interested in the impact on our kids and our family, how the dynamics of our family would change and the impact, mainly safety, to be honest, because I had no clue what to expect. I was really concerned about the well-being of my kids at that time, I guess, is the bottom line.
Yeah. And I think I used the wrong word. Logistics might be better than legalities, but like, how is this all going to work? How are we going to afford to support more kids? Yeah. How are those kids going to affect our kids? How are we going to have enough emotional capacity, physical capacity, financial capacity to take care of all these kids? Like the logistics that go through your brain of raising kids. And I just think that the women are often more emotion-based or just, led by the feeling to make a difference. And we're more, born as caretakers. And then we kind of hand off that other stuff often to our spouses. So I think that in our relationship, there's been a good development of balance, but I think both of us would admit when we first started this, I was bearing kind of the brunt of all of it. And I'll back up, but I came home and, I'm really feeling the desire. I think we should foster or adopt. He was like, I don't know about this. I don't know about this. I don't know about this. And, even myself feeling like I was being led that way had all the same doubts and fears and concerns. And, this is crazy. Our kids are so young. And what about this? And what about that? And I kept kind of praying for me, like deep in prayer, for a sign. And I tend to be one of those people that like, show me the sign. And then the sign will come and I'll be like, well, that wasn't really the sign after, 20 minutes. So then it's like, part the clouds, like let the sign be known. And I had a friend at one point who said, you know, you want the manna to grow on the ground. And I was like, yes, like I do. I want something very physical that I know is the sign, and I know it's.
Show me a real sign. Right?
So every time I would feel like, yeah, God is confirming this and we're really supposed to do this. One, life happened. Like we lost 2 parents. I lost my mom. He lost his dad 4 months later, right as we were, you know, thinking, okay, we'll start doing this. So then it's like, well, how do you take on more kids when everybody in this home is grieving and, you know, dealing with the loss of parents? And so there's so many ways you can make excuses not to step in and do it,
to stay in your comfort zone
and stay in your comfort zone. But in a nutshell, after a church service one day, I stayed after for a prayer group, and in this prayer group, God laid out the entire vision, and it was not just about the kids. Like this is where God, for me, laid out the vision to support and take care of the bio parents as well, which is why we have always included that in our mission of foster care. It was never just take the kids. It was always to try to reunify the family and bring back together the God created family. No joke. By the time I walked to the parking lot, I was like, that wasn't really like God telling me to do this right now, was it? So I was already like dismissing all of that by the time I got to the parking lot, even though 100% it was God if I went into further detail. And I got in my car and I heard the audible voice of God say, was I clear enough yet? And I was shaken to the core. I came home sobbing, and then I'll let him pick up from there.
Yeah. So I had already been, you know, thinking about this and praying about this and, you know, pointing out in my mind all the reasons why this would be like terrible for our family. And here comes my wife sobbing, and I thought that somebody just died, you know, and she tells me what happened. And so I knew this just wasn't talk anymore. I really felt like, you know, okay, if God's telling her to do this, I need to really seriously pray about this, and not just, you know, like half my mind, you know, pray, and half my other mind be, you know, the educated, you know, mind about it, and think of all the reasons that it's going to be hard. So I spent, you know, maybe 3-4 days a week or something like that, and really just did some soul searching. And I didn't hear the voice of God or anything like that. But what I did is I just kind of boiled down my emotions and just answered questions for myself. Like, you know, are my kids really going to be in that much, you know, danger? Is it really that much of a risk? You know, I answered the question, no. You know, and I got to the point where after answering these questions to myself, it was just real simple. Can we do this? And the answer was yes. And I decided, okay, I know I can do this. And then I prayed one more time, and God basically just, my answer was, you just have to let your wife lead. You just have to just follow her lead on this, instead of, you know, thinking it through too much. And that's what I did. And so I just kind of gave it up to, you know, faith that everything would be fine. And that's how we started, you know. And ever since, you know, because in foster care, you know, you get a call about a potential case, you know, and you only have like a minute to decide, you know, while you're on the phone. And, you know, it's not like you could sit there and go through all these checklists of, okay, well, you know, how many kids are there? You know, what's their background? You just don't have any information. It's like, hey, we have these 2 siblings. We can bring them over tonight. What's your answer? You know, at the most they says, we'll call you back in 5 minutes, but it's really, you don't have much time. What my point is, the whole process is pretty much based on faith. You know, you have to just be willing to step out and just take it on. I mean, because thinking it through is just paralyzes you.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Thank you for that. Reason I asked that question, because you guys gave me so, what I like to use the analogy of nuggets, like dropping precious information. And one of the first things that you guys kind of explained was how you fed off of each other, you know, whereas, you know, the wife was more so of the nurturing, the emotional, the passion, and you were more like, okay, logistically, all right, what is this going to look like bill wise? What is this going to look like an actual, and you guys, at some point, and if I can say this, it was like this, and then you guys met right in the middle, and it became balanced. And I think that's important to share that because, a lot of people, as well as you guys know, when it comes to fostering and adopting or even just stepping foot in this arena, there is a huge concern of if I have kids of my own, how is this going to affect? If I'm established or in a place of stability, is it going to knock my stability off in my home? How do I step into this with the concerns that I have? And I appreciate you guys sharing your truth and your honesty. My next question would be, you guys came to that decision, what was the process like for you guys? I'm pretty sure the fears, and the doubts didn't stop there, did they?
Well, I mean, we've always been I think we've always had a heart for giving and trying to help others and stuff like that. That's how we were both kind of raised. Mm-hmm. So we always did look for opportunities to serve others and stuff like that. But when we decided to do this and go to the first training, I think we were pretty excited, both of us. And I can remember in the training, it was like so packed. The room we were in probably had 50 or 60 people in there, right? Couples and some individuals, but it was just packed. It was like almost standing room. It was awesome to see. Mm-hmm. And as they're playing these videos, and Christina probably knows the names of them by heart, but it's of these kids that need all this help, and you just feel so damn bad for them. It's like, and I'm thinking to myself, man, they need like 2 rooms like this. Like everybody needs, I was like, and then so, long story short, by the end of the training, there's maybe like 6 of us in there, you know what I mean? But it's just crazy. The attrition rate, once people were exposed to like what they're going to be dealing with, it's pretty high. I mean, they didn't screw around. Some of those videos were pretty harsh. And the funny part of this whole thing was when we watched those videos, we're like, well, that's not going to happen to us.
Right.
Like those kids aren't going to, smear feces on my wall. They're not going to break my trees and my furniture. It's like, but it all happens.
And he's talking about the videos from it used to be Pride, but now it's the Grow training. So yeah. Mm-hmm. I think part of it is the process itself to get licensed takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I think that process, the first time it took us 17 months, we closed after at that time, it was our most difficult case. We closed for a year because we didn't want to leave our house open with, I mean, there's logistics to all of this, but the agency has to pay for the houses to be open. And we knew we needed a break taking in kids. So we closed down for a while, reopened the next time. I think it took 10 months to reopen with everything already in the system. And then we adopted 2 kids, which this week was our 3-year anniversary of our adoption. Awesome. And we had decided about 6 weeks ago, we were going to reopen. Like everything has calmed down from that adoption. And our oldest is going off to college soon, and thought, okay, like we can help more kids again. And we were told now it's supposed to be like 6 months. You're supposed to be, open by. It's supposed to happen quickly, but just the list that was sent to us to complete to reopen for the 3rd time, it can be a little bit overwhelming. So I think that, potential foster parents need to know that you are going to have to spend a bit of time completing all of this paperwork and the financials and the home studies and everything that needs to happen. So I think that deters people sometimes more so than the videos. I can tell you firsthand that the first time we watched those videos and went to the Grow trainings, we left feeling like everybody should be doing this. Save the kids. After that really difficult case where there was like feces being spread all over our walls and kids peeing off the back porch, and kids are coming from not having plumbing in their homes and stuff like that, so they're just not used to using a bathroom. when we reopened and watched the same videos, the couple next to us, the woman was like, honey, we need to take them all. And I was sweating. All I saw were those behaviors. And I was like, am I ready to do this again?
We were laughing.
Like I was sweating, like so nervous.
We saw ourselves and so many people at that other training. And we were just kind of laughing like, oh boy.
Now we know what it's actually like.
They're gonna
but the kids themselves, like I say through all these years, the kids are really, really precious. There's a lot of baggage on top. I'm sure you speak to this yourself in these podcasts, but there's a lot of baggage, happening with the kids. But what I always found amazing is our toughest cases were also the most rewarding. Because, the kids that come in and are like, I love it here. You guys must be millionaires. And oh my gosh, look at all these toys and look at this. It's really easy to just like pat yourself on the back. But the ones that are really tough and tell you how much they hate it and have that big wall built up, when you get the, I love you or the thank you or something from them, it just means a million times more. And it's so rewarding to see the walls break down and build connections with, even those tougher kids.
Definitely. Wow. I guess, for the audience sake. So, I met, I call like this blessing of a couple doing what we call grow trainings and doing a panel. And I had been a part of panels since I started advocating at like 15. Like I started being a part of like the Pride panels.
Okay.
And I remember the Pride panels used to be all over the state, and those are in person. And I had been doing those way back when, and I stopped doing them. And somebody reached out to me to start doing them now. So I didn't even know that they had changed from Pride to Grow and stuff like that. So I thought it was just so unique. You guys' story and what you spoke to is not just only supporting the youth and the kids that come in your house, but also supporting the parents, and trying to do your best within reason to reunify, But before I get to my question on that particular part, my next question is, so how did you guys decide, because I know they asked this question, how do you guys decide which age group that you wanted to take? Because I know you've heard me speak on this during the panels, that there's a lot of different stigmas on, well, this age group is easier. They're not really affected so much by the trauma or whatever. So how did you guys choose that for yourself?
Well, I think that was one of the ways that we were able to address our concerns about safety for our other kids. Mm-hmm. Because, we just kind of, I think, made a rule that we would keep our kids at or younger than our youngest kid.
Yeah. And that I would interject, that rule was when we first started this, and we're very naive to the process because, through the 10, 11 years, we have taken kids older than our kids. Mm-hmm. We just took 2 more back in that are older than our youngest. But I think in the beginning that probably feels safe to new foster families. Now, what I can tell you out of experience is I know many people closely that have adopted domestically and from foster care from birth. And they are having just as many struggles, if not more so now, with the kids at, preteen to teenage years than we are adopting off Mare, which has a stigma of being the most difficult children to adopt. And it was hard. The siblings that we adopted off Mare was they were broken 100%. But the healing I see, it baffles me that our friends that took in infants and thought, oh, they're so young, they won't be affected by this, are having just as many issues, if not more. Like I would actually say probably more than we're having. So
I just think, it's as we've gained experience and perspective on the trauma past, right, of a child, it just helps you deal with things as they come. I mean, I wish we'd have done some of the trainings we've recently done a long time ago, because it adds such a great perspective as to what to expect and how kids respond to trauma. And there's books out there too. Christina, you know about that book. I forget the name right now, but
The Primal Wound.
Primal Wound. I mean, the whole fallacy of the infant being having a non-trauma background is illustrated in that book. And what I'm saying is these pieces of information about trauma just give you the greatest perspective on how to deal with things and what to expect, your case to be like, and it just prepares you.
But a couple things. I think when you take in older kids, you recognize the trauma. And even if the kids aren't displaying it, it's there because you've seen the history on paper. So you put services in place. I often think that people who are taking in younger kids don't think there's as much trauma. So there's not as many services in place because it's not felt needed, if that makes sense. And I wouldn't say this for everybody, but I think that that's kind of the overall mentality is the young ones are just going to heal from this. They're already in a good environment. We don't need to deal with the issues because they weren't affected by them. And they surely are. I know for myself, all of the team meetings or those initial meetings you have with the bio parents when you take a placement, I outright told every family member we worked with, and remember, we never worked with the parents of our adopted children because they are a MARE placement, so rights were already terminated. But every foster placement we had went home or to grandparents or like in some aspect back to bio families. And I would look right at them and say, my belief is your kids are going to grow up with two outcomes. One being, my parents loved me enough to change and get me back. Or two being, why didn't my parents love me enough to change and get me back?
Yeah.
And I said, so I am coming to you telling you, we are not here to take your children. We are here to give you time to choose option number 2. Get your children back. So I was pretty flat out with the parents, like, and very open and saying, my dad's a recovered alcoholic. I'm glad no one came and took me away from him. Like, we have a great relationship and he has his PhD and turned his life around. And I don't even have images or memories of him drinking. So I believe anyone can change. And I know that the children that we adopted really struggle with why didn't they do what they needed to do to get me back? Not saying they don't love it here, not saying they're not bonded, but there's that deep wound of what went wrong, like what went wrong with that. So I think that it's important that any age that you're taking in, you recognize that. And again, I think a lot of it depends on the kid. In the case, you already know, and we'll say it for the podcast, we are not fans of displacing kids. We had to displace one child in the 11 years. That was so aggressive. Like, we literally were afraid somebody might get harmed to the point where it couldn't be reversed or potentially killed in our home. So like that child had to go into a different home with older kids and then thrived. But other than that, we stuck out our placements, whether they were difficult or easy.
We had the siblings of that boy.
And we kept the siblings of that boy, and we're still in contact with that family. I think that sometimes kids who are a little bit older have some memories of what they came from, and it makes it a little bit easier to understand why they're in your home once they like process and deal with that. I think the younger kids at some point are going to face the same questions of, why is my skin a different color than yours? Or why do I not look like you? Or
why am I not in the same grade?
Yeah, why am I the same age as so-and-so in this home, but not in the same grade? That's a good one, because we have that happening in our home. But the questions will eventually, I mean, unless you're going to lie to children and tell them they weren't adopted, eventually the kids are going to start asking questions. So sometimes I think with the older kids, there's not all of that wondering when you're going to open the door and discuss it all. It's just there from the beginning, and it's always open conversation.
Yeah,
Definitely.
transparency.
And you guys know, you guys have heard me, why the reason I asked this question is because, this is a big piece of what I'm passionate on and what I'm in my advocacy is just breaking down that trauma hits at all ages. And it starts definitely in the womb if there's major trauma, that it doesn't matter what age you foster or adopt at, there's going to be questions raised, like you said, and there may be potential behaviors following behind that. I believe being a foster or adoptive parent takes as much resiliency as it is being a foster youth or alumni. It's that same amount of perseverance, and love and compassion that is in that heart. But also the other thing, a part of that is kind of just like what you said. If behaviors do arise, you're in a particular situation, and I can't speak to everyone. I believe if you let me trace back. I believe if you create dialogue and communicate, especially with those older youth and stuff like that, and also like you guys are doing, it's respecting the place of that birth parent, especially if they do know. Those behaviors don't tend to be as hard. You're able to work with that youth, and so what have you. Now with younger youth, it's a little bit different because the comprehension of what I'm feeling, it looks different for a younger individual. And I'm speaking, not a foster parent. I'm speaking from my experience being a youth care worker in these facilities, working with younger youth. Like, I've had a little bit more heightened behaviors working with younger youth because the comprehension was different versus older youth. Yes, they have the memories that they can recollect, and you can talk to them about the memories when they're older. When they're younger, the memories are fizzled, if they do have them, and talking to them is like, well, I don't care about all that. I just don't understand why my mom isn't here right now. Why my dad isn't here right now. So you're kind of just trying to let them know, like, for me, the best thing I told them, and I don't even know if it's the right thing to say, was like, I don't know why she isn't here, but I do know wherever she is or wherever he is, they love you, and they care about you, and they want to be here with you. And until then, I'm gonna be right here beside you. We gonna rock it out. And everything. I remember I had a kid that just blew up, and it was literally over one small thing. Like, he wanted some gum. He saw one of our other staff members have some gum, and he wanted some gum. And at this point, I was a supervisor. So I went back. I was like, why can't we just give him some gum? And there's a lot of rules and restrictions about, like, sharing. I was like, if it's going to get him to calm down, like, and just like, he just wants some gum. Like, you just, and for him, later on, he explained to me, like, I've never had gum before, like, and I wanted to experience it. Mm-hmm. That was an experience for him, and he wanted to have it. Now I don't condone, like, all right, look, you can't always act out when you want something or whichever, you got to be able to explain. But that's a little bit of my experience, and why I asked that question. My next question for you guys is, we all know when it comes to, like, fostering or being a guardian, or even being a social worker, there's a balancing act. So how did you guys balance your regular jobs, everything else that you're doing, and then getting youth and people that needed a little bit more attention?
Well, can I hop in on this one?
Yeah, I'll just say Christina handled like 90% of the paperwork and, dealing with the agency and all that kind of stuff. And I basically just tell me when and where, if it was something to drive to or take a kid to, or, but she really did handle most of it when it comes to logistics.
Well, and I wanted to back up a little bit, actually, and just encourage foster parents to try to be in some type of relationship with the bio family.
Yeah.
Because for most of our cases, our long-term cases, the bio families have still reached out to us with pictures or thank yous, or, you know, not that we needed a thank you, but to be able to get an update on these kids that you kind of pour your heart into. I feel like that's what everyone wants, right? Is to make sure that the kids turned out okay. So I just encourage people to try to maintain that relationship and be respectful. And I think that that's part of the balancing. Like,
well, I don't know. I think that for so many of these parents that struggled, I mean, let's face it, they struggled enough to lose their kids, right? So many of those parents have had nothing but people criticize them and judge them and all this kind of stuff. When you're a foster parent, you have an amazing opportunity to, you know, not from an elevated status or anything, but you know, you have the opportunity to be a mentor to people, right? And I think when you develop a relationship, you know, and they begin to trust you, and they almost, I think some of them almost want to just show you, hey, see what we're doing it, right? We've earned it, and now we're, you know, and we're proud of them because we've been through the whole journey with them. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and I guess it's where your intentions are. It's loving people as people and understanding not everybody comes from the same, you know, background and experience, and, you know, understanding that most parents that have kids in the system were in the system themselves. Like it's just different than the way him and I were raised. And then the support systems are different than what we have as support systems.
You get them to understand they have a chance to break a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
But the balancing, when you said balancing act, my head immediately went to like just balancing all of those emotions and respect and relationships with the bio families. And I think because, so the guardianship we took is 1 week today. So we had to end up closing our foster license. And this is a past placement that, you know, we were still able to visit with through the last couple years that they went with family, but we're able to step in now and say, okay, like, the support system for the family is not what it is here. There's a hard time that's happening and an inability to take care of these kids right now. What a blessing we can keep them out of foster care and bring them here. But that wouldn't happen if you treat everyone like you're better than them and you want to adopt all their kids, and adoption is the only right way because God forbid their car broke down because it's really old, or, you know, it's like, it's those stigmatisms of like, but their life would be better here. No, kids' lives are better with their family. Like, they're supposed to be with their families. Like, and I'm not saying that can always happen. And I'm not saying people don't do bad things, but the way it's supposed to be is the families that God created are supposed to be together, in heaven on earth, right? In terms of work and all that, so we have 7 kids now this past week, and I definitely got behind at work, and the school district gave us a bunch of trouble getting them in school. So the kids were home with me and I couldn't get any work done. And I mean, thankfully I have jobs where there's some leniency and some understanding with that. But then today I had to put in a lot of hours, and I'll have to work this weekend. And I just feel like it's the ebb and flow of life. So what the other part that came back to me is our tagline, "It is what it is." Because I was reading through everyone else's and they were so inspirational. And I started laughing. I goes, ours sounds really like negative and depressing.
No, it's just,
but we're foster parents, and to be foster parents and take in these kids last second and guardians and this and that, it is what it is. You have to give up control and go with it. And you can't look at it that they're your kids and they need to be raised your way. It is what it is. Like, go with flow. So that's how work and all of that goes too. It's like there'll be these pushes, and then if things get busy, we may get behind. And we, you know, Scott and I have a phrase since we've been married: how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So whether you're going to eat it like a piece of cheese or an elephant, it's all one bite at a time, and just like keep moving forward and, you know, trying to reach towards your goals.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that could be said. I mean, a lot of us are like, there's some things that have happened in my past that, like, I could have been a phone call away from being in foster care myself. Mm-hmm. You know, so we're not too far removed when you really boil it down from some of these families, you know, that we're partnering with to get their kids back. So, you know, it's a humbling experience being a foster parent, especially for me. It was. In the beginning, with our first case, I mean, I can remember this like it was yesterday. Our first case was an infant. And I can remember being home during the day, carrying this little boy in my arms while he had spasms from withdrawal, right? Drug withdrawal, mm-hmm. as his body cleansed. And I remember getting so frustrated because I couldn't barely hold him. He was like a fish out of water. I'm telling you, hard to hold him. And I remember getting very frustrated and like getting angry and this and that. And then it finally hit me. I'm like, I'm such a selfish person. Like fostering for me was like a mirror at my selfishness. And it's just through the grace of God that, you know, and the humility that he gave me to be able to recognize that and to change it and to start to really see, you know, these kids for what they are. They're just like me, really. And, you know, so it gave me a lot of patience, I think, and again, perspective, but it's just amazing how being a foster parent was really a window into myself, you know, mm-hmm. and I get to see who I really was.
And we're still not perfect.
No,
I mean, there's still.
I'm not saying I'm perfect at all.
No, I mean, I'm thinking of an incident like 2 months ago where I'm like, oh, I wish I would have handled that one differently.
But I'm just saying, it blew me away because I had no idea I would learn so much about myself being a foster parent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our older kids now, our two oldest are 17 and 15, and they're like, why do you let that go? And we never would have gotten away with that, which I think happens in any, you know, situation with multiple kids. I think parents naturally chill out a little bit the more kids they have, so you just keep adding the kids on and the parents calm down. But I also think that we just see things so differently. Like one of the boys, well, more than one of the, we had a lot of boy placements. So when I say boys, like there were a lot of boys through our home, just broke everything. I mean, would take things and just slam it through the windows, and took this toy airplane and, you know, just
we replaced our back screen door, I think 6 times in 1 week.
Yeah. So he took the screen off when it happened again, and he was like so frustrated. Yeah. And he's like, is this really how it's supposed to be? Our whole house is supposed to be destroyed. Like, is this really what God wanted of us? And I looked at him and I go, I'm pretty sure God cares more about those kids' souls than the screen door. Right. But even with that said, like, we were so frustrated at how much stuff, and still today, like how much stuff just gets broken and destroyed and, you know, has to be constantly replaced. But I think both of us now are just like, oh, thankfully we, you know, have extra money to replace some of this stuff, or some of it'll have to be on hold. And we're trying to teach the kids the value of money. And like, if you would stop destroying certain things or put your toys away, you'd have more toys. We're not replacing those right now, or, you know, but it can be frustrating if you're living like hands gripped closed.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where that whole, like, it is what it is. Like, you really just have to hands open, live day to day. And whether you want to or not, this journey almost forces you to live a life like serving others, or you're just going to be really mad all the time. The time.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I would speak to you guys' quote, in fostering, you know, when I think of it, you're meeting these youth, you're meeting these parents where they're at. Right. So the phrase, it is what it is, like, that's just like, look, no matter the situation, no matter what is there, like, there's nothing I can do to change it. We're here right now, so we're going to face it together, you know? So that's what I took out of the quote. So it is as inspirational and inspiring as all the other ones to me. But one other thing that you spoke on is the generational thing. And when I was never fostered or adopted. I didn't get that opportunity. I spent most of my time in residential facilities. And a part of my healing was I knew I wasn't going to get the correct answers or even get the answers from my parents. And at that time, I didn't have no way of tracing from grandparents either. So what I did was trace back questions that I had, and what I found is that, my mom, unfortunately, she didn't have the right upbringing. So that nurturing aspect was lacking, My mom was also in a dysfunctional relationship with my dad. And some may say semi-abusive, and because of her upbringing and not knowing how to not project that to her kids, that's what happened, and I'm not excusing the abuse that I got from my dad or my mom or, siblings or what have you. What I did was come to a place that my mind could comprehend to understand for me to get to a place, okay, I can't sabotage relationships that I build with people. I can't continue that cycle, and so forth. And I think for most people, with similar situations like mine, that's what they have to get to. That's what the youth that come through your door have to get to, some way in their own right and own path. It may not look like mine, but that's what they have to get to a place where they're okay with what transpired, whether they go back home. Because, and one thing I'll say, even if they go back home, they still remember, like, hey, why was I out of your house for this amount of time, Mom? Like, those questions will still arise, whether they're with you guys or at home, or at another placement. So I just, wanted to speak to that generational thing, because that my mom's mom, came from the South and was very hardened, so that transferred to, my mom and what have you. So like, I look back at all that and I'm like, well, it makes sense. It doesn't excuse it, but it makes sense. Now in the work that I do now, how can I translate that to when I'm doing panels, when I'm speaking to policymakers and legislators, to like understand that, okay, some of this stuff is generational, and to put it in better perspective, okay, we look at the drug epidemic. How has the drug epidemic created generational foster care for some of these families that have led down to bad parenting and bad teaching habits? And how do we support by keeping these families together? So, that's just something. But my other thing that I wanted to ask you guys, you kind of touched on it, was education. Now, you guys have had a lot of kiddos in your house, so how do you maintain supporting, the education and following all the rules, whichever that comes down to you guys, and making sure that those kids get the best that they can?
Well, interestingly, we lead that foster care support group. And one of the things I spoke on just in the last group, the topic was what I wish I knew about foster care before I was a foster parent. And for me, I said how much time I would spend on kids' schooling. So I think I was a little bit naive in the younger kids, that aren't in school. You don't have to deal with it as much at the time, right? As they get older, you'll probably see some of these deficits from that early development time. But I think that God our whole family is set up for foster care. It's not just Scott and I, meaning our three oldest biological kids are absolutely fine in school and pretty much get straight A's or A's and B's without us overseeing anything. So I'm not sure if you had a home, like when Scott and I say like, everyone should do this. I don't think either of us feel that way anymore, because the mix of the entire home has to be a certain mix to be able to blend the kids in. So basically our three oldest, we don't have to spend much time on with schooling, which frees up time for the younger two. We have one child who by his own fault, but our oldest of our adopted is on an IEP. So the school steps in and helps with a lot of stuff with that. And then our youngest, we are just trying to put every service in place we can these past few years to try to catch up anything that was missed. So basically we have paid out of pocket for tutoring for like 3 straight years. And I just think it's important to be willing to do stuff like that. Like if you say you're willing to help the kids, that's all the stuff that kind of wraps around that the kids need as help. They don't just need a home. There's services that they need put in place. So especially, I know you had mentioned something about the COVID and the virtual learning. I never in my life, I teach at the collegiate level, and I learned very quickly I'm not meant to be a kindergarten and first grade teacher through the homeschooling of COVID. But all of that too was really, it was kind of like, well, we got to make this happen. So we got computers for everybody and set up workstations for everybody. And I kind of walked around, bouncing around kid to kid, making sure people were doing their assignments and staying on top of things. But I think that overall, we're really happy we got our kids when we did, because they were not in necessarily the best foster home. So I'm glad they weren't there stuck at home for 3 years. There was some concerning stuff happening. So they were safe here, but never in my life did I think I would have to school 5 kids. That was a lot. That was a bit stressful.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, anytime, the whole like grade school kids on Zoom, whoever thought that was going to be a good idea, but
to give
walking around with laptops into the bathroom and like,
so to give reference for people who want to do this and watch videos and say that won't happen to us. Like our youngest videoed her privates and sent it in as her assignment. So like, that's what we were dealing with.
It's not funny. Wait, what?
Oh,
it was not funny.
It's funny
so
now.
I was like fuming livid until the school district was like, Miss Tasco, you signed an electronic agreement that you wouldn't do this stuff. And I was like, are you kidding me? I would never have given this child like a device with the internet and cameras and all of this all day.
I know, right? You got to be able to laugh at some of these things. Bus behavior is another one that we kind of.
Well, the bus too is very frustrating, because when you're trying to balance work and you need the kids to ride the bus so that you can get to work, and I think at least half of the kids we took in, if not more than half, have almost been kicked off the bus. So that's been a challenge.
Right.
That's been a challenge too. But again, it's all just trying to redirect behaviors. Like I think the buses they were on were probably a little bit wilder than what's allowed in our district. I think the accountability was not there's video cameras on the buses in our district. I don't know if that's in every district, but then when the kids say, oh, I said, this word and not that word, which is already reviewed by multiple people on a camera, like there's no getting out of it. So I think too, like for our kids, our son at one point was like, why is everyone in this house always snitching on me? I hate this house. And I looked right at him. I said, God knew you needed a lot of eyes snitching on you. Like there's a lot that needs to be reined back in so that you don't end up in jail. So it's that type of stuff too. I think some of it is just getting used to a new environment. Our son still last week, and has said this multiple times, the hardest part about moving from home to home is learning the rules of the new home. Yeah. And he still says that 3 years in, learning all the rules of a new home is so overwhelming and so difficult.
Yeah. It's one of those, I don't want to say it's counterintuitive, but a lot of these kids come from like basically no structure, but at the same time thrive on structure to grow. You know what I mean? So you have to find a way to implement structure, quote unquote, rules. And then at the same time, you're trying to teach them or instill the benefits of following, some rules and structure, because it betters themselves, so it's kind of a double whammy. You know the structure is good, but you also understand that the structure is gonna, it's gonna meet, it's not gonna go too well.
And then it's finding ways to talk at the kids level, like the bus issues and the schooling issues that we were having with our kids. The bus issue, I was able to sit the kids down and say, you understand that my classes at the university start, like I have to leave. You have to get on the bus so I can leave and teach. And that brings in money. And that's how we're going on this ski trip next week, or whatever it was at that time. I think it was Kalahari is where we were going. A water park. And I said, so if I have to drive you to school every day, I can do that. But then I don't keep this class because I can't teach it anymore, because now I have to drive you to school and drive you home. So we lose that money. So we still have money to pay for everything we need, our house and our food, but we do not have extra money to go to Kalahari. And the faces just stared at me like, oh. Another one that I remember the face just like, oh, is when I looked at our son and he had made a really bad choice and told people he had a pistol in his backpack on the bus. So like, this is real life. This is the stuff you're dealing with, with the kids. So obviously the kids were scared, told the bus driver uses the walkie-talkie. He is searched, everything on him, locker, everything is searched with the police waiting for him off the bus. And thank God our district has had so much grace and understanding, and we've just like partnered. So that's the other part of how you manage all the schooling. You become a team with every teacher and every principal at the school, and whatever they ask of you, you do, because you're a team and you're there for the kids. But I had to tell him then, I said, you understand, if you get kicked out of this district, it doesn't mean you don't go to school. There's other districts like the one that you came from that will take you back, and I'll have to drive you to that district. Well, and he was very bullied and hated his last district. And literally it was life-changing. He was like, oh, I thought I just stayed home. And I said, no, if you stay home, that's part of how kids get in foster care. You have to go to school. And I said, but our district does not put up with this stuff. That's why there's no fist fights happening in the hallway. And our district has there's zero tolerance for this stuff. So I will have to call those other districts you were at. And it's just being able to talk to the kids and like, get them to understand, you think you're manipulating this situation to get what you want, which is to not go to school anymore. But what you're really doing to yourself is putting yourself back in the district you came from, and you hated it there. Right. So it's like, it's trying to get them to process what they're actually choosing to do.
Definitely. Wow. And just speaking to that communication and that dialogue, and just continuing to realize your supports, and I believe those on the panel, and I think you said this best. Don't quote me, I don't know how you said it exactly, but I remember you had stated, utilizing your resources in your village, kind of just like what you just said, you don't have to be in this alone and trying to foster, be a foster parent by yourself. It won't be successful. You have the school district, you have your the social workers to a certain extent and everything like that. You have like different things like foster closet and other community resources like your support group, so utilizing all those things when doing this helps maintain success, not just with you guys itself, but with the household and with the youth coming in and out. I have a couple more questions, because I know you guys' time is precious. Go ahead.
Can I add something to that? One of the things that that we found out, like after the first or second case, was like when you first get a case, it's like there's so many things to do at once. You got to find a dentist, you got to find a pediatrician, you got to find this and that all take their insurance, which is tough too. And so after the second or third case, Christina, started to, just keep a team of the go-to people for the different services that you would need, right? And that was very helpful. Like any new foster parents, that would be something that you want to get on right away. Find out who in your area takes Medicaid, for the dentist, for the pediatrician, for this or for that. So that
speech.
Yeah, the eyes, speech, therapy, anything. And that way, once you get your first call, you're not scrambling to find them and meet the deadlines that they have for you to get these evaluations done. So that's a great tip that Christina came up with shortly after we began all this.
Definitely. Thank you for that. Wow. And I'm just recalling back to all the things that you guys have said today, and just so much knowledge, so much knowledge and wisdom, and I appreciate it. I have a couple more questions, like I said, I know you guys' time is precious, my last couple questions, starting with one of my last couple questions is mental health. How do you guys maintain your own self-care, but also support all the kiddos? And I believe you guys have some dogs too.
No, if everyone could see and not just hear, right, that we're laughing because we have some kids that are like, we don't want to go to therapy. And Scott looked at him and said, well, your mom and I need to be in therapy, so maybe we'll just take your appointment.
We'll take your hour.
I think it's important to find the balance with that as well. So we, our adopted son, it's been 3 years in therapy. We've taken some breaks because especially when he first moved in, it was looked at as such a punishment by him that it actually shut him down more. And what we really needed to spend time doing was bonding. Now you can't do that when they're still in foster care. It's going to be mandated that they're in therapy, and it should be overall, that's a good thing. It's been 3 years, and just in his last 2 visits, he's finally started to engage. And by engage, I mean answers very short, like 3-word answers. So I think that patience is important with all of it. If you don't have kids that come in ready to open up and deal with these issues, or you have the ones that kind of shove everything to the back and say it's fine and that they don't want to deal with it. I think for Scott and I, we make sure that we have time together, specifically like time to do our things, whether that's just go to a workout once a week would be like my thing that fuels me, or something for him that fuels him back up. And then I think for the kids, it's important to have them in services, but it's important to find the balance of the services, especially, after years of services. So, whether that means issues come up and you deal with the issue at hand, if you don't feel like there needs to be a long-term, plan in place for services. Like, I think kids handle things differently, and you have to be intuitive to your kid and what they need. And that for some kids, it's very, very, very helpful. For others, it feels like punishment, and it's actually going to potentially cause a wedge in the relationship. And then for the parents, I was going to say this earlier on when we were saying like getting licensed and, being a team. I don't know any couples who started the process of foster care that didn't feel an attack on their marriage going through that process. I think that you almost have to expect that the weak parts of the marriage or whatever, relationship of who's going into the foster care, it's going to exacerbate the weak areas. So it's being aware of that. And then we've just, I don't know, for him and I, we don't really fight anymore, but I feel like it's mainly because one, we're tired, and two, that's exactly what I was gonna say. It's not worth it. And that takes age and experience too, that you realize everything kind of works out. So why waste your energy fighting about it when we could just watch a movie or something much more relaxing?
We agree on the big things, so the little things don't matter as much,
Definitely.
I don't know if that helps. We don't come from mental health backgrounds, so we don't have the perspective of probably some of your other
for
hosts.
Our mental health, we've always tried to maintain reasonable bedtimes for the kids. We don't let them just stay up and do their own thing. So that gives us some time at night, to catch up one-on-one. We make every grocery trip a date night. I mean, we really try to, no matter what it is. Hey, I need gas in my car. You want to go on a date? You know, just stupid things. But we try to keep it light and fun. And
that is very true. And I think that's a COVID thing too. I don't think that's just an us thing. Yeah. I think like Costco trips became dates. But yeah. It is true. Even just picking up a kid, now that our kids are older and we have drivers in the home and stuff, it's real easy to say like, do you want to just go together to get so-and-so from soccer? Yeah, and it gives us time to talk. And
a lot of this is a lot of this comes with just, I mean, what are we going on 20 years now, marriage? Mm-hmm. So a lot of it comes with that, but just the structure in the home with the kids, to not let them basically rule the roost.
Yeah. I mean,
gives us time to kind of collect ourselves.
And he is very correct that we have always had pretty disciplined bedtimes, whether they argue about it or not. They can go read and talk in their rooms, but like they need to be in their rooms by 9:30. And even on the weekends, it's pretty much 10. Like the kids just don't stay up that late. And we've never had kids in our bedroom. So like that may just be an us thing, but
yeah, you gotta have a space for yourself, you know?
Yeah, we don't even really like the kids playing in our bedroom, if that makes sense. Like hide and seek and stuff like that. We try to say that our bedroom's off limits and is just like the one space that's ours. Though kids nowadays tend to just be on our bed all the time. So you know what I did? I went up and laid on their bed. And then they came up into their room and they told me that was weird. And I said, that's how I feel when I come in my room and you're just laying in my bed.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I feel like finding a space in your house that's kind of, if you have a large family, you need a space to kind of go have some quiet time. And
definitely. And you guys touched on a lot, and there's many more questions that I have for you guys. But you know, sake of time of everything, you know, I want to be mindful of that for you guys. My last thing is more so a statement from you guys. What's next for you guys, and what bits of advice that you guys have for youth or potential foster parents?
I feel like we layered in a lot of advice for foster parents. And for me, if you would have asked me, you know, 2 weeks ago, what's next, I would say, oh, we're reopening our license and we'll see what God brings us. But because we just took in 2 kids a week ago, we're at the what's next for right now, because we kind of are living day to day and are not sure, you know, how long they'll be here. So we're kind of loving on them as they're here and trying to support the bio family, and we'll see what happens after that. But you caught us in a time where we just feel like we kind of took a placement in, so we're still adjusting to that.
Yeah, I think for the youth, you know, I'm talking like maybe early teens, teenagers, you know, where they can kind of think about their future and stuff like that. I think it's important for them to, you know, have some time to like deep think, you know, not just be on screens and all that, you know, set some time aside to think about what kind of person they want to be. And we've always had kind of an attitude of, giving and service to others and stuff. I said that in the beginning, but if you choose to, you know, find opportunities every day to do that or to express that, then your life takes on a different meaning. And there's basically no such thing as just standing still. You're moving one way, and if you're not moving that way, you're moving another. You know what I mean? So if you're not living an active, intentional life of giving and serving from, you know, your own abundance, then you're going the other way. And so, you know, you have to intentionally though go after that and choose that direction. And I think if kids can choose that and be mature enough and humble enough to recognize and do that at a younger age, it changes their whole life, you know.
And I guess advice for foster parents, you know, if you're feeling led to do this, I would encourage people to just go all in and stay committed, and know that anything in life that's hard, you're going to make a million excuses in your head of why you can't do it. But anything that you go after that's hard and stay committed to, you're going to see a huge reward from. And it won't just be from the kids. You yourself will completely change as a person through the experience.
I'd like to just leave you with one quote. It's from Christina's heard this many times. It's from a doctor from long ago. He said, you never know how far-reaching something you might think, say, or do today will affect the lives of millions tomorrow. And, how could we have known? And we still don't know, but all of the kids that we've had in and out of our house, all the parents that we've, mentored or partnered with, will never understand the total impact of those bonds. You know what I mean? And, but we do know that it's all positive, so I guess we can leave you with that.
Well, thank you. It has been a very, very big honor, and I appreciate you guys sharing your truth and your honesty, your experience and expertise with me. I say this, I would love to have you back. I have more questions and so forth, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to get a lot of people like, oh man, we need to hear more of this, because as well as you guys know, and I've been on panels with you guys with potential foster parents, there's shortages out there, and I believe that there's shortages because the lack of information getting to them on what it really is like. There's a lot of stigmas, rumors on what this is and that, and that's not to distinguish. There are some bad outcomes. But it's not all negative. And there's a lot of reward within this work that you guys are doing. And I just want to say, as a foster alumni, I appreciate the service and willingness that you guys are putting into the youth lives that came in or in your house right now. And you just never know. I go by that motto, you never know who you're working with or, supporting that. They may be the next president, you just never know what you're doing and how it may affect them later on, and what have you. But it's truly been an honor. So thank you. I say this spiel every time the audience know, COVID is out there, it is doing its thing, and whichever, please stay safe, do what you have to do to take the right precautions. If you're thinking about getting vaccinated, go ahead and get it done. If you're not getting vaccinated, okay, that's your right. I'm not getting political, but take the right precautions to take care of your village. It's all of us together, doing what we have to do to make sure that we're safe. And outside of that, you guys have a great night, great morning, great whenever you're listening to this. Thank you guys for tuning in to Resilient Voices and Beyond. Thank you.